you talked about environmental stresses, and of course especially for outdoor growers, you're going to run into those challenges with climate chaos. But I think the economic stresses too.
Yeah.
So I think the cannabis industry is a perfect example where we don't have the same amount of money to be making sure that we have every nutrient or have excessive nutrients. So we probably want to dial back. Part of it, a good plan for environmental sustainability to pull back some of our nutrients. And if you have a biostimulant that's working so well that you can actually reduce your input costs of your fertilizers because you're getting increased uptake, or in the case of soil, increased retention as well. It's going to be a good return on investment. I was hinting at that one trial that you talked about, in which they stopped doing the trial because they wanted to use the product on everything in their greenhouse.
That's happened a few times.
Oh, yeah. You hate that as a scientist.
It's really skewed our data resource. It's happened it's actually happened quite a few times where people have been really excited when they start to see how things have been developing, how things are progressing with our trial group, that they just go, we're just going to add it to the whole room. And I'm like, my data. Because it's really important to show people that comparison, especially if they're already using a Humic and Fulvic, and to have a comparison of, why I use this product, how's yours going to be different? And then they just switch it partway through. I'm like, no, I want people to be able to see that they can. Humic and Fulvic is wonderful. I want everybody to use a Humic and Fulvic, whether it's ours or whether it's another brand. I really believe wholeheartedly in the benefit of these products. When you're producing for flavor, for quality, for quantity, they really are. It's an easy addition to any system. But yeah, there's been a couple of those. There's a fellow that was out east that we sent product out. Just said, just give it a try. He grows really, really big trees. Cannabis, very big trees. And he started feeding just a couple of his trees, and they started to grow his average to about like 6 foot in width. And then the ones that he treated grew to about like 9 feet in width. And he's just like, oh, forget this. I'm just going to feed it to everybody. I'm like, awesome. But I would have loved to have seen at the end what the differences would have looked like, because those are, when people, especially dedicated growers that have been doing this for a long time, they're passionate about their plants. They know their strains very well. Whatever the cultivar is, it's the same thing with the guys in the apples and the cherries. And the vineyards is always a really fun area to get into as well. When they understand their plants very, very well, and they get excited about seeing progression and seeing that performance improvement, that makes me super happy. It's something that we do experience. I mean, with our foliar product, so we have our one Humic based product, and then we have 3 fulvic products. Our Fulonic is just our fulvic acid, which is highly adaptive. You can use it as a foliar product. You can blend it into an IPM program. If you're using it for pest, if you're doing any kind of pest sprays or PM sprays, you can blend it into a lot of different things. Our F1 is our only product that's not organic because it does use an ammonium sulfate. It really helps to boost growth early in a veg phase. Again, you have the chelating power of the fulvic acid with whatever else is in your nutrient program, but that boost of nitrogen and sulfur really helps to improve growth and tissue build in an early veg phase. It also, in an outdoor environment, helps to stabilize nitrogen in the ground as well, which is where you need it. So it reduces leaching and gas off. Our other products, so the third of our organic products is our F2 foliar. So that's a fulvic acid base, but we blend boron, manganese, zinc, and sulfur. So all 4 of those components really improve photosynthesis. It helps to support the chlorophyll production and different processes there. You see a greening up of the canopy. You see a vigor and an attentiveness within the plants very shortly. So we've had a fellow that he does all regenerative agriculture. He was using another fulvic product as a foliar and used our foliar product. They sprayed in the morning, sort of 2 sides of a hybrid greenhouse, outdoor greenhouse. The whole team went around the property, came back and looked at the room about 6 or 7 hours later, and they just saw a difference in how the treated side, the quad treated side, was just perkier. Leaves were standing at attention. It was elevated. There was just a vigor and an enthusiasm in the plants that wasn't representative with the other application. So their whole team was like, what is this? And so they bought a barrel. They're like, we're going to use this all the time. This is great. So it's really encouraging, and I feel really good when I see other people see the success within their own programs and within their own facilities. I think my happiest moment was actually with a vineyard. Back in 2021, BC was hit really hard with forest fires. We were under a heat dome where temperatures peaked at about, in some regions, 56 degrees. I think the most famous catastrophe was Leighton burned down, a whole city burned down. We went into a couple of vineyards in the South Okanagan and Soyuz area, which is down south, and it gets very, very hot down there. They were hit by a lot of the fires as well. So there was a lot of smoke cover. There was a lot of a lack of photosynthesis because it was just so smoky. Plus the heat was causing a huge amount of stress. And so there's a lot of solar burn. A lot of the vines just weren't tolerating the heat very well, least of all the fact that it was really dry. They were using the sprinklers really just to try to, as fire protection, not so much feeding. They're really trying to protect the properties. But again, when growers know their yards, they know their spaces, they know their plants really, really well, to go in and do a site visit and visit with these guys and be like, how are you finding things? And the feedback being, we know it's subjective, but they're like, yeah, no, the treated is just tolerating all of this way better. I'm like, in what way? Like, I can't see through your lens. So tell me what you see in your vines. And the response was, well, there's just a lot less solar burn, and you can see that. And you can see there's a lot less red tone to the treated sections. There was just a bit more greening. You can see that there was visibly more green. It was less solar burn. They were producing a little bit more. They weren't stunting the same way under the heat stress. So they were able to, again, self-regulate under that stress. But the most interesting part, which at the end, and you won't know this, again, this is sort of that insurance policy, you won't know until you go through that. Once they go through the fermentation process, with grapevines or with grapes off the vine for wine especially, Yan and Brix are two really important factors of the composition of that fruit. So the Brix is the sugar and the Yan is the yeast attributable nitrogen. So this is what the yeast is going to consume through fermentation. So you need the sugar, you need the nitrogen. Having those two components in higher quantity and higher quotients within that fruit is what they saw in our product, in the sections that were treated with our product versus the control. So through fermentation, the initial fermentation didn't need any support with our product. So we were able to allow those grapes to perform better, pull up the right kind of nutrients so that they could perform better. And through the maturation process, and while they had through the fermentation process, they had pulled out their samples at several months later as they were checking the wine to transfer them into barrels.